Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me are Dr. Anahy Fonseca and Jussara Korngold. Hi, everyone. But if you're here with us today, and this is the very first time you're watching this podcast like program, please note that this program, the Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. And this is a space to offer a a room for us to talk, to confront, to compare, to correlate, and to expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens. And the goal for us is to, through a warm and informal conversation, bring insights, tips, real world advice, anything to help us lead a better life. Today's episode will be focusing on dreams. But wait, not dreams as in goals, objectives, achievements, but dreams that in which we sleep and have dreams. But before we start our conversation, I would like to first recognize the sponsoring organizations that are here with us today. And they are Anahy Brazil, the TV Mansão do Caminho, the International Spiritist Council, and the United States Spiritist Federation. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, please check us out at www.spiritist.us. If you have any questions, please do write them down, send us via chat. And if we don't have time today to answer them, we will at a later episode. And here we are. Hello, Anahy. Hello, Jussara. I'm really eager to hear from both of you about dreams. But how about we start with you, Anahy, on dreams and how do we go about learning more about them? What is the approach, perhaps, that Freud and Jung had when they first started to study this really obscure discipline? If you think about it, it's very difficult and it's still in its infant stage, right, Anahy?
Yes, in a certain point, but I know that Jussara will help us today a lot to clarify a lot of aspects that Jung and Freud only touched. And the Spiritist knowledge brings much broader aspects of this study, let's say. In a certain way, it's difficult because we are talking about the unconscious. When we sleep, right? It's not that we don't have a consciousness. Our consciousness is always there because we remember dreams. And even if we don't remember, because the unconscious slips, through our fingers like sand. But especially because the ego, our consciousness, usually kind of is afraid of the unconscious, so represses or denies aspects of the unconscious that is trying to, come forth to consciousness. So the thing is that we all dream. We
Mhm.
dream every night. May or may not remember our dreams, but everybody dreams. But if our sleep is not a very good one, and nowadays everybody is having problems with sleeping because our schedules are so busy and things like that. I brought a very nice example for later on in the episode. But the thing is that since we are having, a lot of us are having problems sleeping, so many times we won't remember our dreams, okay? But
Mhm.
everybody dreams, and dreams are very, very important. So the first academic, let's say, medical person, because everybody knows that Freud was a neurologist, right?
Mhm.
So in 1900, he publishes The Interpretation of Dreams, his book about dreams. And it was, in this book, he was the first, he gave to dreams a scientific dimension. Okay. For the first time, an academic and a medical person really examined dreams scientifically. So he paved, we can say that he paved the way to the exploration of the unconscious. This book is like, opens a door for the unconscious, let's say. So from there, he constructs a model of our psyche. And we say that there, in the interpretation of dreams, he writes and he constructs what we call the topical theory. That means topos in Greek is places. Okay, so he divides. Because of this exploration of the unconscious through dreams, he divides the unconscious into, everybody knows, the unconscious, the pre-conscious, and the conscious. Okay, the three places in our, let's say, topos in our psyche. But the thing is that Freud considered the dream, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so a normal functioning, something that was quite normal, and it is because everybody dreams, of our mind. But at the same time, he would consider as a psychopathological
Mm-hmm.
expression. So both at the same time, normal and not very normal, let's say, to simplify, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why? Why not very normal? Because he would say that in dreams, there is an equivalence between the dreams and the neuroses for Freud,
Mm-hmm.
because the basic function of the dreams for Freud would be the gratification of repressed desires.
Mm.
So everything that the ego say, no, I don't, I desire that, but I cannot, deal with that. It's not acceptable. Then we would have a censor, okay, an inner
Mm-hmm.
censor say, no, this has to be repressed and sent back to the unconscious, okay, mind. But the thing, so for Freud, the dream is a psychological mechanism that works to preserve sleep, okay,
Mm-hmm.
expressing and at the same time discharging unacceptable, unconscious desires in a disguised way. Which way would that be? Through symbols.
Mm.
So then comes Jung.
Can I, before you go there, so let me just make sure because this is awesome, right? We have Freud, I believe he was the very first book to bring that very academic, very scientific study of this thing we call dreams, right? And he examines, and by doing this, by publishing this in the book, The Interpretation of Dreams, he opens the door to this enormous study that still goes on, which is our unconscious. But as he brings that, he brings about, I'm just trying to, before we go to Jung, brings about this idea: is this normal or not normal? Is it a normal condition? Yes, it is. Everybody dreams. It's a basic, and its basic function is to bring it up, right? But on the other hand, it really can foretell the, you call it psychopathological state, meaning an erotic state of most of us, I would say. So let's see a little bit about, now that we know what Freud talked to us, what did Jung tell us about dreams?
Okay,
Miss
and just to
Fonseca,
make a little,
would you-
sorry.
just,
Go ahead,
I
Jussara.
think it would be right to say that he's talking about, repressed desires that,
Mm-hmm.
when we go to sleep, then I allow. my my unconscious to act upon it without me the feeling, the guilty and etc. So the repressed desires come to place. And now let's see, Anahy.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly that.
I recently went through a small procedure, medical procedure, and everybody was telling me, well, you are going to undergo anesthesia, and watch out. As you're waking up, you may say things that it may be not the best way that you would portray yourself. So make sure whoever is driving you home that he or she knows about it. And it's just very funny that the sensor is a little bit looser, right? It's not as controlling as the sensor that we have in our very lucid, very awake state. But go ahead, Anaí.
No, it's exactly that's Freud point of view. So
Mm,
he would say, and in a sense, he would say that remember that the dreams are a psychological mechanism to preserve the sleep.
mm,
And so because we all have these repressed desires, so they would be disguised through
mhm,
symbols, the symbolism,
mhm,
and then there would be like the energy connected to them would be a little bit like we say discharged, okay,
mhm, mhm,
through the dream process. That's Freud's idea, okay? But then comes Jung. Then comes Jung.
yes.
And so dream interpretation is the cornerstone of Jungian psychology and analytical technique also. We Jungian analysts work a lot with dreams. And it is also one of the most influential contributions that Jung made to the thinking and technique of modern psychology.
Mhm,
And just a reminder that Freud started with the dreams, studying dreams, the unconscious through dreams, but at some point he developed psychoanalysis and the
mhm,
couch and the person interpret free when the connections when the person can't remember now the exact words, but when the person just keep talking and
mhm.
then the analyst will interpret, okay,
Okay.
free association, that's
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
okay. And in the couch and all, and then he left dreams alone. He said the interpretation of dreams, they wouldn't would be not necessary anymore because we have free association and psychoanalysis. So then
Mhm,
the psychoanalyst stopped working with dreams. Many still can work, but the majority, just left alone because then we have free association and the couch and psychoanalysis. Okay, but then what Jung says is, in Jung's point of view, the psyche, our mind, but in a broader sense, the psyche
mhm,
is both a natural and a purposeful phenomenon, which means that it's evolving. And then after I'll tell this, I would love to see Jussara and she bringing the spiritist knowledge. Because then Jung says Freud didn't have this idea of the psyche and of the evolution of our psyche. Okay,
mhm,
the development of personality, sorry, the maturity, yes, but not the evolution of consciousness in this way. Okay, and remember that Jung uses the psyche again, brings the term psyche, not mind, and the psyche is in Greek the soul. Okay, so it's a broader view of the psychological phenomena. And he sees dreams in the same way as the psyche, as natural and purposeful. the spontaneous and undisguised, it's so totally opposite as Freud in this sense,
Mm-hmm.
spontaneous and undisguised expression of unconscious processes. Okay? So he says that according to Jung, Freud made a mistake in supposing that the reason for our frequent difficulty in fully unveiling the dream's meaning was the imposition of a disguise by some supposed dream censor. Jung didn't was not in a it didn't agree with Freud in that because he thinks that for Jung our difficulties in interpreting dreams are due to their unconscious nature because dreams do not express themselves in the verbal or logical language of conscious life, but find their voice for Jung in a quite different language, which is the language of symbolism. And symbolism for Jung is not the same thing as for Freud.
Mm-hmm.
For Jung to understand dreams, then it is necessary to learn to speak this language of symbolism. The language of the unconscious is symbolic. And so the unconscious is rich in symbolism and archetypal images, ancient images, we can say, that are universal patterns or motifs, we could say,
Mm-hmm.
which come from the collective unconscious. Because remember, in other episodes that we
Mm-hmm.
talk about, Jung went deeper in the collective unconscious. So I think we can talk a little bit later about the difference of symbols to Freud and Jung. But the main thing is that Jung didn't agree with Freud that we have an inner sensor that disguises this image so the what is repressed can be discharged, the energy can be discharged. Jung is said that actually there is kind of an intelligence, and we talked in previous episode about the higher self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our higher consciousness that is evolving and that is learning with this experience in this life, but it's different and it's wiser than the ego, than the ego, our consciousness that we use to adaptation, for adaptation in this life. So for Jung, uh, the higher self, which Jung calls the self, capital S, knows much more than the ego. And dreams are all, and the symbolisms and the issues that the dreams brings, the messages are all orchestrated, let's say, by the self, our higher self, and are messages for the ego, for the development and achievement of the psychic goals in this life. I'm not sure that's okay, so I would love to, if everybody's following, because it's
Yes.
quite a difference for Freud. It's all disguised and it's all about discharging energy of the repressed. So there is a psychopathological, a neurotic things mechanism, let's say, in the in the construction of dreams. And for Jung, it's totally different. Jung says,
Yes.
well, dreams can seems like something very strange, alien to the ego, because the
Yes.
ego is not used to this symbolic language, but they are very important for this conversation, let's say, between our higher self, to use the term that we have used in the previous episode, and the ego, so that our psyche can evolve.
Can I say
And
something,
yes,
Anahy, before we go, because I'm dying to hear from Jussara with a now a third explanation, if you have a third lenses of what dreams are or dream interpretation from a spiritual perspective. But what I find it interesting here is we talked before in the idea of plenitude, right? That Joanna de Angelis brings to us, or individuation, that idea of one, we are one, and being one is not only um, uh, ensuring that we are connected with our ego, our center of our consciousness, and our self, which is our soul, our immortal spirit. In that connection, even though they are somehow disconnected, is creating that integration that leads to that individuation. And that also includes the what we accept, right, in our context of the persona that we create, and what we sometimes don't accept and we repress in our shadow, and that goes into the deep recesses of our unconscious. But it doesn't matter, it's still the individual, the individuating individual, if I may say so, and how we go through that process, the mechanism of having dreams to bring about, and it's up to us to really become, I think, if you so desire, masters of interpreting our own messages from ourselves. Then it becomes yet another mechanism for this self discovery, this path that it is indeed bringing us to that final destination, which is the individuation. Does this make sense? My how I understood everyone? Because it's all about a paradox, right? Or polarities. It's physical and it's spiritual. It is mind and the psyche, or the brain and the mind and the psyche. It is the ego and the self. Those are all components of the one, which is what we are, right?
Jussara, would you like to go ahead?
Jussara, tell us
Yes.
about spiritism, and what does spiritism bring about dreams, right? Because it's quite rich, right, Anahy? Quite rich discussion
Yeah.
here.
I think when we are talking about this subject, so first, hello everyone. How good to be here again with Marcia and Anahy and all of you that are following us. We've been writing your comments and really feeling so much joy that we are somehow giving our small contribution to help us all in this unknown or known journey of discovering our souls. But what we talk about dreams is very intriguing. That this it's something that has been on the minds of people since the beginning of times. We
Mhm.
see different reports on the Bible, the Old Testament, and how they played important parts in the conducting of especially the Hebrew people, but also, in Egypt and all of that, we have stories of rulers that had their wise people to come and interpreted their dreams. In the Babylon king that I'm not so sure if I'm going to pronounce his name, Nebuchadnezzar. In
Right.
English, it's quite a complicated name, but he also had dreams, and the prophet Daniel would be, talking about it. And so it is there. It is always something that intrigues people. How come, I sleep, I go into oblivion, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it's not oblivion. What is that? And of course, the only rational thing that people could think, and then we go to everything that Anahy is talking about when scholars, started studying and analyzing more about it. And then came Freud, and then came Jung, and they brought different concepts in relation to who we are. Like, we are much more than just the the conscious, but we have other levels in our mind that not necessarily are at play all the time. And of course there is a lot of confusion, although it was revolutionary what they have bring it, they have brought, and the contribution they gave and are still giving, because those are things that we have to take into consideration, the role of the mind, the unconsciousness level, and how it plays with our desires and symbolisms and all of that. At the same time, we realize that there is a void, that, or a gap, that they could not fill up. There is something missing. It's like, the missing link
Mm-hmm.
of the life of the dream. And this is where spiritism come, bringing a different not a different perspective, but adding up to what we already have in the field where human beings could analyze. While on earth, incarnate in our physical bodies, we have limits to what we can really analyze, research, and scientifically prove.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things that we cannot, and so that's why, in terms of the scholars, sometimes it's difficult for them to go to the next step. And then is when spiritism comes, Joana de Angelis comes, and of course, in her purpose of connecting all of that, really trying to lead us to get to know ourselves, right, and to understand us in when we are awake, but also understanding that when our physical body is sleeping, it is still us, and yes, we are responsible for everything that we are going to be doing in the sleep state as well. No place for repressive conduct, anything like that. And everything, of course, is started with spiritism, when we learn, especially in the spirits book, that we are more than just the physical body, that we are a spirit, and that we have a spiritual body that connects matter and a spirit life. And when we are going through this process of sleeping, and this is the reason why also there is a great emphasis in how we prepare ourselves to sleep, trying to, be as much in balance as possible. We know that sometimes we have some difficult days, worries, and etc., and we take everything to bed with us that we shouldn't, but it is there. It's in our mind. So one thing that spiritism tells us is exactly that at the time of sleep, if we could prepare ourselves better, regardless if you are worried, concerned, and in an ill disposition, not healthy per se, as much as you can, you should try to calm yourself down, because then is when you are going to be leaving your body resting, but your spirit goes to new adventures. And this is when Joana de Angelis comes and explains what happens. So she goes to the point of saying in this book, Moral Laws, there is a message that is called At the Time of Sleep, that yes, we have the archived memories, we have not, and then when she's talking about that, she goes so far beyond than Freud and Jung, because now it's not just saying you are a spirit and you live a life of spirit while you are sleeping, but it's reincarnation. You are immortal spirits. So there are so many more lives, so many more memories for you to access that is not just the collective archetype, it's memories that you bring, and traumas, and successes that you bring from other incarnation, and everything because of the different times and how we are even up all tuning up all the necessary uh, pieces that constitutes us as a complete integral being. It will come to surface. It's interesting because in some books they say that we may be living now uh, uh, experiences that are related to 2000 years ago,
That's
because
awesome, huh? Yeah.
only now I can actually deal with them, decode them, uh, get that. We are not talking here about making amends. We are not talking about karma necessarily. We are talking about, uh, let's say that I was a disciple of Socrates. Oh my God. I chose one, right? But then, I didn't uh, I didn't benefit from that in the sense I didn't know how much that value at that point. But philosophy was always there, and the life of him was always there. But then I have I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 lifetimes that no. But now that I come in a different circumstances, and there are certain things that I have to check in my curriculum, life curriculum, eternal life curriculum, I'm going to refer to that time. And all that is also, talking about Socrates, Jesus, words of life eternal, it is going to make an impact now. And it
Mhm.
may come in a form of a dream. So when Joana de Angelis is talking about that, it's not just the unconscious, because many times we may call the unconscious actually the life of the spirit.
Mhm.
So let me give you some time to talk about.
So, Anahy, what are your thoughts? I love to know that Jussara was Plato's best friend, but not the best student of Socrates. Tisk tisk. But
Oh,
let's go back, right? Several incarnations ago, and at some point, the dreams that are resurfaced may be something lived millennia ago, but it's part of your archives, right? And it's coming through, and the quote unquote magic is how do you access it? No longer Plato's best friend, but now Jussara in the 2020s, living in New York City. How does she access through her dreams what she already knew back when? So, Anahy, what are your thoughts? How can we undo? Yes, go ahead.
because I wanna include in that the emotional
Yeah,
content.
sure.
Let's say that I lived at the time of Jesus and I met Jesus, and I
Okay.
heard and I saw some of the teachings and examples
Hmm.
of Jesus.
Hmm.
But of course, 2,000 years ago,
Hmm.
if I'm not that great today, imagine 2,000 years ago. So I heard it. I didn't benefit exactly from that, but it stayed there. Now, finally, I'm ready to look at Jesus' teachings, Jesus' examples, and go into a different path. Okay, this is one thing that I have now, and that I can have access to the words, the examples. But now, if I connect emotionally to the time that I was there,
Hmm.
it is going to be even more powerful.
Correct.
It's going
Yeah.
to increase in the sense, now I understand Now I relate, you see. So this is the reason why sometimes, yes, we are going to access certain information or experiences, because now that I can have the rational, I will remember now the way that Jesus look at me once.
Yeah,
This is going to be giving a totally different perspective, and in me just studying, analyzing, and trying to follow in his footsteps today. There is an
absolutely.
emotional content.
Yeah, love
Like,
it.
when you like that certain dessert that your mother used to do. I mean, it may not be the best dessert in the world, but there is an emotional content to that, right?
Absolutely. I can relate to that when going to Brazil for the first time with my husband, who happens to be American, and I spent months explaining to him the taste of a mango, right? From Recife, where I'm from, the northeast of Brazil, and he tastes it and he goes, yuck, it is too bitter. It is this. It's not the memories of that experience. It was quite magical to me because it related to my childhood and all of it. But back to uh, Jussara, friend of Plato, or Jussara in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. So there's that emotional content to the message that thousands of years later, Jussara is ready to resurface. Anahy, now from a psychological, psychotherapeutical, or analytical viewpoint, how can we break down this component of dream interpretation?
Yes, I was listening to you guys and to Jussara and thinking also about Jesus' teachings,
Mhm.
okay? Because we know, many of us, not all of us yet, 2000 years was not time enough for some people, but we are all getting there. That it's the most, as Joanna says, Joanna de Angelis, it's a psychological, I think the most complete psychological textbook, if we can say, psychological and spiritual textbook for our spiritual growth and development of our consciousness. And he would talk in parables,
Yeah.
right,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
teachings.
Mm.
So using a lot of metaphors
Mhm.
that traveled through different times and cultures because are archetypal. Like say, they have ancient images, like the image of the sacrifice. Okay, Jesus in the cross is an example of the sacrifice of love, right?
True. Yeah.
For all the ultimate love, the love that the Creator has for all of us. So it's and also the love that we must develop towards ourselves and our neighbors, right? And to develop this love, we have to be able to withstand, let's say, we support the different forces that try to pull us to different directions, let's say, right? Like in the cross, we have to
Mhm.
be able to hold those different forces. As you were saying, Marcia, in the beginning, to be a whole, to be, let's say, one, and to join our different experiences, parts, aspects, feelings, memories, and imagine, as you started saying, from many, many past lives, not only, as Joanna says, not only this life, but many past lives. And many times we know the spirit evolving, that exactly as Jussara said, we haven't learned probably things from past lives, but the learning, the integration of all that learning from
Mhm.
that experience, probably we will be able to integrate, okay, to make a whole of those experiences, feelings, thoughts connected to them in some later past lives, because I have to acquire some cognition as a
Yep.
spirit, not
Yep.
only as a
Yep.
personality, some experiences, develop feelings that I need to evolve inside of myself. So at some point, like using Jussara as Plato's best friend, or we are
Plato,
going
sovereign,
to
but the real deal.
or yes, or as we would also love to, and of course he has us, Jesus, as our, all of us as best brothers and sisters, of course, but we need to feel him, to be feel that we are worth his love. He loves all of us, but
Mhm.
we have this need to deep in our higher self to be worth all, this love. So I think this is a motive of evolution.
Mhm.
It's the light that calls to us and help us to evolve, the light of this love that Jesus represents to us and brings to us. That's why he is the path to the creator, right? Because he's teaching us this love. And let's go back to Jussara as an example. So something that my soul, my spirit wasn't able to understand, and has to wait for development of a different parts of myself. Let's say this to simplify. And at some point in one incarnation, let's say this incarnation, well, now I'm not a child anymore. I'm a teenager. I have
Mhm.
some understanding, spiritual teenager. I have some better understand of some more experiences, and my thinking and feeling, it's a little more evolved, so I can connect to some teachings that I haven't been able previously. So what happens? Then comes our higher self, because all these memories, all this learning is in the higher self, not in
Mhm.
our poor small egos, right? That is suffering here to adaptation, but is doing the job here in this life of this learning, but has to be, as Marcia said in the beginning, connected
Mhm.
to the higher self, because otherwise it will lose its direction and the purpose of this life, what I'm here to learn, right? So there comes the symbols, because that we were talking about Jesus' teachings. He used a lot of metaphors, a lot of symbolic language, because he was not talking to the ego of those people, ourselves, whatever, that were so childish, okay, and so aggressive and so lost in, and so with little cognition, even
Mhm.
with all, we like to think of ourselves, oh, I know a lot, our science has developed so much and this and that, but we are, let's face it, still like teenagers spiritually. So at that point it was worse. We were like children, really, but spiritual children. But okay, now I have grown up and a little bit more. I understand a little bit more, but to talk, but now I'm reincarnated using Machusada abroad. And of course, I don't have access to my higher self, direct access.
Mhm.
So how can the higher self talk to the ego? So one of the things, and that Jung studies this a lot, is through dreams and the symbolic language, because it's going to be symbolic for us here, the ego, as and Jesus knew that, of course, much better than everyone. And Joanna has learned a lot with with him and with Saint Francis. We all know that she tells us about that. So what we have to do, we have to learn our own personal soul language, let's say, and
Love it.
learn
Love it.
our own
Yeah.
symbols, our own
Yeah.
symbolic, because my symbols are not going to be the same for why. For instance, if I dream with a table, the table will have a symbolic meaning. The essence can be the same, but it's going to manifest in my psyche as a symbolism of something really special or particular from myself. And it's going to be, and if Jussara dreams with about a table and Marcia dreams, it's going to be different because of the individuation process, because of our specific myths, sacred stories, things that we are here to learn. So I think we are ready to talk about symbolism, but I think, I don't know if Jusada and Marcia and the talking with the soul that
Uh-huh.
Jusada introduced through all the beautiful knowledge and examples that Joanna and the Spiritist knowledge brings to us. But I'm not quite sure. Are we going to part two, or do we have
Yes,
time
yes.
now?
Let's go ahead and close up here. So this will lead you to the next episode where we'll zoom in into the language of the soul, or those symbolic translation. And with that, I just want to say thank you for both of you. We really started this discussion today about dreams, and we talked about Freud, we talked about Jung, we talked about that spiritual understanding. We brought Joanna DeAngelis a lot in her book, Moral Laws, right, Josada? But I think we can spend the next episode really deep diving into the idea of its interpretation. With that, I just want to say, if you have not really been exposed to the works of Joanna DeAngelis, this is a plug for all of you. Joanna DeAngelis is a spiritual author that, in close collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco, has authored 16 books. They're part of the um, psychological collection, or the psychological series, and they are really uh, a series of books, and most of them are small, right? They're tiny but quite dense with the teachings, and I love that we get to speak and bring some of the content into those discussions that we have here. So what is so special about Joanna DeAngelis? She created that bridge between spiritism and depth psychology. So it is truly my great pleasure to be here and host this amazing discussions around those issues, and perhaps some root causes, and perhaps some potential solutions to our issues that we have every day. So with that, I say thank you, Jussara. Thank you, Anahy, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.